Moms, what's a wild secret of your past that your kids rather not know about? My husband and I had our first daughter when I was quite young, and there are nearly 11 years between our son and her. So one day my daughter will tell my son all the crazy things about their mommy, my working in clubs for years, the illegal substances, parties, and punk rock bands crashing on our living room floor. The wild times went on until our lives became more stable and predictable. Our adult daughter remembers positive things about her childhood, so I doubt it will be a conversation where she judges me harshly towards her little brother. I know it's not very clear. I aim for brevity, so the lack of details might be the issue, I suppose. I worked as a bartender in several clubs while attending mortuary school to become a funeral director. I earned a good income from working 2 to 3 nights per week, which allowed me extra time to pursue music, spend time with my family, and focus on my studies. I had a rough but brief period of issues with substances in 2003 after facing some unresolved emotional trauma. I sought help through rehab and therapy, and I got better. I was part of various punk rock bands between 1992 through 2005. We built good friendships and connections by performing in nightclubs. We even had the chance to open for some much cooler acts and earn some decent money. At home, we'd play punk renditions of children's songs in the living room, and the kids, my own child and the others' kids, would go wild. They danced and laughed and enjoyed juice boxes with their pizza. Well, who needs to grow up with Disney when your mom's a punk rock queen, am I right? Story 2. Yikes, I've made some questionable choices in my past, and I now have a teenage daughter who isn't aware of certain things. During Euro 2000 in France, I was involved in a triad with a French professional footballer. Generally, I was a side companion to this guy for about 6 months. Being young, it didn't seem significant as I left France shortly after. Fortunately, it was just before the internet became prevalent, so our outings and dinners weren't documented. However, we were cautious to never appear in a picture together with just the two of us. One night, I drank away all my money and had no cab fare left and had to walk home. It was around 3:30 in the morning. I was buzzed and I knew nobody was home. Again, this was in the 90s, so there weren't any mobile phones yet, and I couldn't call anyone. So after a while of walking, a car pulled over with 2 dudes in their mid-20s asking for directions to a big city up north, about 2.5 to 5 hours away from where we were. I tried to explain the way, and they asked if I wanted a ride, so I got in and they dropped me off at home. Later, I changed my outfits and planned to go with them to the other city, but we realized that most places would be closed by the time we arrived. So I took them back home, they stayed the night and left in the morning. Nothing bad happened, I wasn't hurt, but man, things could have gone terribly wrong. A group of guys I used to hang out with once asked me to stay back one night while we were heading out, only to rush up to a guy and mug him. That incident still haunts me to this day, honestly. Story 3. That I met their dad on World of Warcraft when I was in high school and ran away to be with him 2 days before my birthday, and he is 11 years older than me. They can know the overview, but boy, the details of it are really shady, especially when I'm going to have to teach them internet safety and online stranger danger, you know? I'm now divorced and their dad has moved away. We have a positive co-parent relationship, and though he's not very involved, we both just want the best for the kids. This leads me to the fact that I don't want them to know how I feel about the relationship looking back and the manipulation and emotional hurt. I don't want my daughter to know that I initially didn't want to have her because I was 20 and in college and knew there was no way we could support her, and that I was heavily guilted into it by their dad because of his age, at 31, being his last chance. The tough part of the past that I'd rather not expose to them. By the way, we used to sell grass by the pound out of grandma's basement too. And that her dad loves all kinds of I have sampled most, just not the heavy ruin your life ones. Truly, I just want to be a heart. Well, 31 isn't even remotely last chance territory. What a dirtbag, right? Guys are biologically able to have kids almost indefinitely, but in retrospect, it was more of, if I don't trap you with kids, I don't think I can get another woman to do it. Such a manipulative move by that guy. So, finding love in an online game, that sure sounds pretty wild, kind of normal for 2023, but hey, too bad it wasn't meant to be. Do you think that secret was surprising? Wait till you hear the one from Story 6. You will not believe what the daughter discovers. Story 4. When I was young, I dealt with severe PTSD. I barely managed to graduate from high school, not because of grades, but because of the messed up coping mechanisms I was dealing with. By the time I reached college, I had experimented with nearly every illegal substance. Following the birth of my son, I grappled with a serious problem which lasted for about a year. I've been clean from all of that since he was nearly a year old. Unfortunately, his dad was extremely violent, both physically and emotionally, towards me. Sadly, I didn't fight for custody during our divorce, as I should have. I spent 3 years enduring constant ridicule and a whole year suffering physical mistreatment. Currently, I'm fighting for full custody of my son, and I've found stability in a relationship with my daughter's father. I now have a fulfilling job, excellent benefits, maintain a tidy household, and receive support from my family. I'm determined to be a positive influence and a robust support system for my children. At the moment, I'm actively searching for a therapist who specializes in cases like mine. Fortunately, with the help of positive coping strategies, I've learned to responsibly use medication when it's prescribed to me. Recently, I was prescribed Percocet for a severe tooth infection that spread to my jaw. I strictly followed the prescription, taking only half a pill every 6 hours, and I had no inclination to continue beyond the necessary course. Additionally, I rely on kratom for managing pain due to severe tendinitis and a healing labral tear in my hip. Overall, I've made significant progress compared to my past self, and when my children reach an appropriate age, I plan to be open and honest with my previous experiences and challenges. However, for now, I provide responses that are suitable for their age. For instance, when my son asked about why I was no longer married to his dad, I explained that we weren't kind to each other. Considering he's only in kindergarten, I believe sparing him the details about the bruises is the right choice for now. Story 5. I had my firstborn daughter at a very young age. I was in 12th grade, skipping school every single day, partying all the time, and quote-unquote hanging out with a dealer at the same time too. And that's her dad. He and I aren't together. I moved on and got married, and he's currently engaged, and he stopped dealing shortly after we found out I was pregnant. Surprisingly, we co-parent really well, and he's now quite the stand-up father. All our daughter knows is that her mom and dad didn't love each other, so we separated, and now she's lucky to have 2 moms and 2 dads who love her very much. She's now in 1st grade. I'm wondering if it will ever come out later about how her dad and I met. Yes, we all co-parent really well. It took a little bit of time, but that's normal, I think. We just wanted her to grow up knowing that even though we may not live together 100% of the time, we all do still talk, communicate, and love her the same. Story 6. Last year, I discovered that my mom became pregnant during her college years. The guy left as soon as he found out, and she never saw him again. Despite that, she made the decision to have the baby, actively avoided returning home when she started showing, and ultimately opted for adoption. My grandparents, who passed away a few years ago, were unaware of this, and I only stumbled upon this revelation through an Ancestry.com DNA test. Through this test, my half-brother reached out to me, and together we managed to piece together the story. She felt a sense of relief when everything finally surfaced at the end. It had been a heavy burden for her all of these years. She's in her 70s, I'm 40 now, and my new half-brother is around 52. Needless to say, it was an enormous surprise I would have never guessed in a million years. My mom had my brother during her college years and had me in her 30s. I cannot imagine the shock they felt when they saw the results that said, "Surprise, you have a long-lost sibling." Story 7. I began getting myself baked in high school, starting with trying grass and then transitioning to snow within about 6 months. My habit, which turned into a problem, allowed me to experiment with almost every substance imaginable. While I fooled around people for money and/or substances, I constantly stole things for both fun and necessity. I conned people into giving me valuable items and money. Eventually, I stopped and relaxed a bit, but I remained recklessly promiscuous and indulged in every other bad thing available. This lasted until I turned 28, hitting rock bottom. My lowest point resulted from 2 events in the same month. I received a DUI, and I engaged with a terrible guy who I discovered later was positive. We hadn't used protection. However, there is a silver lining. I underwent testing and found out I have HPV, but nothing more severe. I also became clean. I'll mark 6 years of being sober in July, celebrating with my husband and my 2 beautiful daughters. Story 8. I don't want my kids to know anything about my upbringing. I really don't. I can't watch anything family-themed without crying. Most kid movies leave me with a lump in my throat so big I could choke on it. And as they get older, it's harder to turn my face far enough for them not to see and twice as hard not to cry. It's a real struggle. My ceiling is their floor, and I really just don't want them to have to handle grown-up problems until they're grown-ups. My wild secret is that's why we go for walks as a family rather than the movies. The movies are somewhere my husband takes them for special one-on-one time, so it is a special thing that they get to do, but I won't make them sit through their mom having a freaking breakdown over some Ohana means family and family means nobody gets left behind line. Story 9. Growing up, my mother was a titan. She graduated top of her class in Farm D and chaired several major med regulation boards. She was always very serious about school, and we were told that B's were unacceptable because she was a straight A student throughout college. We took that to heart until I was cleaning out the attic a few years ago and stumbled upon some old college grade reports. Guess who got a C in sociology and another one in linear algebra? Tough take, Mom. Tough take. Oh, busted. Being so extra about our grades is really the most toxic thing ever. Hey, now if you've lived through some of the same parenting nightmares, then give this video a like and hit that subscribe button. I've got more awesome stories coming your way. Appreciate it. Story 10. Not sure how intense this might seem, but just before I was born, like 2 or 3 days prior, my dad's older cousin had a daughter who was born severely unhealthy. Although she wasn't stillborn, her prognosis wasn't more than a few days. After I was born, my dad's aunt entered the delivery room and said to my mom, "You two are young. You'd have plenty of time to have another child, but my daughter won't. Let me buy this baby off of you." I only learned about this during high school because my sister revealed it to me. Apparently, my parents had never planned on sharing this with me. Story 11. I was an exotic dancer and worked simultaneously at a bank. I don't think I would share that, but if I heard them talk down about exotic dancers, I'd probably educate them on what it's really like. I did what I had to do to put food on the table and give them a good life. My immediate family knows, except my stepdad, and my children's dad knows. We sometimes talk about it, but not really. Story 12. As the daughter of a mother with a hidden past, my dad was cruel and extreme alcoholic and frequently hurt her. She retaliated by kicking him so hard that he became unable to have children, after me, of course. He has since passed away due to drunk driving, taking 4 people with him. While tipsy, my aunt told me everything. Story 13. I spent much of my younger years getting baked, but now grass is socially acceptable in most cases. It's not even a thing anymore. I'm disappointed. It's almost amusing to have something to shock your kids with. My own mom is quite conventional and very old school. I bet she's probably hiding the fact that she runs a local club or something. Story 14. I'm the dad in this situation, but my wife was deeply involved with kickers in the past. I helped her in breaking free from it by moving the family to a new town. During this transition, she spent 2 weeks in bed dealing with withdrawals while I managed every other aspect of the household, including finding work and arranging the kids' schooling. With the kids, I simply explained that she was unwell and needed rest, which wasn't entirely untrue. It was incredibly emotionally draining, but I'd do it all over again in a heartbeat because it was effective and she's been clean for 2 years now. Kicking a bad habit is tough, but seeing it mess up a whole family is even worse. Props to them and to the dad for pulling through. Story 15. I was a sugar baby in college, making a lot of money, but I blew it all on frivolous things. Additionally, my best friend from college and my roommate had the same sugar daddy. My kids affectionately call her aunt, they adore her, and she enjoys babysitting them. My roommate and I shared many intimate moments together. It was enjoyable, primarily because our lover found it exciting. I was also submissive to both of them, so yeah, I did some nasty things. Story 16. Once, while my mom was tipsy, she told me that my dad was actually her high school teacher and they began a relationship when she was his student. She mentioned they would often spend time together when she was in her school uniform. They successfully kept everything secret for years, eventually marrying when she graduated from college and I was born a few years later. Story 17. Last Easter, my mom revealed to my siblings and I that she used to have ties to the Yakuza. She shared this because her sister intended to disclose it, feeling that my mom had taken her daughter and was leveraging this information. Our cousin came to live with us from across the country as her mom was in jail. Story 18. My high school boyfriend and I had a son. We pursued an open adoption through Catholic Family Services. Despite our separation, we both received updates on his well-being. Additionally, I've included my son in my will too. Story 19. To be honest, most of my past involved leading a rough life where I behaved as if I were in a successful 80s hair band, albeit a much poorer version. There were years when I'd be lucky to weigh in at 90 pounds because I often had to choose between kickers and food. Most of the time, I chose kickers and for a while dropped down to 75 pounds. Whenever I got baked, I'd immediately start planning how to get more. Before I got clean, and even when I realized I had a serious issue, I'd only do the bare minimum to avoid withdrawal symptoms. I'd cry while heading to the place to get stuff because I desperately wanted to stop, but I couldn't muster the strength to endure the sickness that goes with quitting. Eventually, my family decided to finance something, and it was the only thing that helped me stay clean after numerous rehab attempts and trying to quit. I've now been clean for over 13 years. Living the hair metal life without the rockstar bucks sounds pretty rough. Good to hear she's made it through all of that. Story 20. My mom has quite a history. She's been through a lot, pulled off some risky moves, obtained a fake ID for work and school, stood up for the girls my uncles wronged in high school, dropped out of high school herself, led to my grandpa's arrest, and overall had a pretty tough childhood. She shared her past experiences with us to guide us toward a better upbringing. Bonus, while heading to a Little League baseball game during my childhood, we were cut off by a young couple as we were leaving our shared driveway. My mom stepped out of the car and gave them a piece of her mind. For some reason, the girl shoved my mom. My mom reacted by tackling her and giving her a lesson. The girl foolishly reached for a rock, but my mom swiftly restrained her arm with her knee. The boyfriend tried to intervene and received an elbow from my mom, causing him to back out in fear. Story 21. This story comes from my dad. While I was home from college, we stayed up and had quite a bit to drink. When I confessed my fondness for psychedelics, he clapped and said, "I knew it." When I asked why, he revealed, "Your mom was the trip queen. We discovered she was 4 months pregnant with you when we were tripping during your first couple of months." The dude was basically tripping before he was even born. But for real, that's kind of messed up but funny at the same time. Story 22. Throughout most of my life, both my parents were very honest. However, during the summer, my mom mentioned that before I was born, my dad didn't want to have me. On my own, I had already deduced that his hesitation stemmed from our financial situation not being strong enough to support another child. Despite this, my mother fought for me. Consequently, my dad decided to quit drinking and smoking in order to provide financial support for me. Story 23. Not a thrilling secret, more of a shameful one, I suppose. I've never disclosed to them, and I never will, how their father treated us after the divorce. There were weeks when we went without water or electricity because he refused to pay child support. Their father consistently insisted that I, quote-unquote, was the one causing their deprivation because I could always just hand over the kids. When the kids bring it up, I allow them to believe I struggled with managing money. No child should know that their parent cared so little about their well-being. Story 24. I used to sell grass and pills. I juggled 2 legal jobs and the dealing to afford my 1-bedroom apartment. Consider, in no particular order, insurance, health, car and renters, cell phone, internet, food, toiletries, off-site laundry, fuel, and utilities. It's way beyond just rent. Dealing covered my rent, while the other 2 jobs took care of everything else. Breathing has become the most expensive habit. Well, as they say, we gotta do what we gotta do, and rent is a pretty big thing that we gotta do, so... Story 25. I'm married now, but before meeting my husband, many of my relationships were with women. I used to discuss this, but I believe they might have been repelled by the thought of me having any life before they entered the picture. I've also dealt with depression since my teenage years. We've touched on why I take meds, but I don't think they fully grasp how serious it is. Besides, grass has recently become legal in my state, so I'm considering giving that a try. Story 26. I supported myself and my daughter by working in an adult novelty store when I was a struggling teenage mom. Her father had left and I was striving to finish school. I did what was necessary, which involved selling certain items and not asking questions about the section that was cordoned off and curtained. Story 27. In the 90s, I flew to Canada and spent the weekend with a guy I'd been talking to in a chat room. I also grew grass legally. When I did it, my straight-laced father went on a long speech about growing techniques and tips. About 2/3 through, he suddenly stopped, stared at me and my brother, and added an addendum, "So I've heard." Through it all, my mom was shooting daggers at him. Story 28. I'll be honest with her about my past partying, illegal substance use, loss of friends, mental health challenges, self-harm, dating women, faith struggles, and my various relationships. However, I will not discuss with her how her father almost pressured me against having her. He's a great father, and I'll leave that conversation to him if he ever chooses to bring it up. Their relationship is precious, and I wouldn't want to risk harming it. This mom was a rave queen. It makes me wonder why our parents always have a meltdown when their kids want to party. When they were kids, they partied all the time and more. Hey, thanks for watching until the end of this video. Now, if you want to watch more stories about moms doing all sorts of crazy things, stay tuned to What Was the Craziest Thing Your Mom Ever Did? Story 2 was unbelievable, and I'll see you there. And thank you for watching this one.